Hi everybody, thank you. As Chief Innovation Officer, one of my jobs is to produce those predictive trends decks that you all see at the beginning of every year, and I've been writing about a predicted upswing in mobile advertising and native advertising and content for the last couple of years. So I was really delighted to have a chance to moderate this panel with two very passionate native advocates who I'm going to invite up onto the stage now. First of all, Ilana Westerman. Ilana is the principal of Create with Content. They are a digital strategy and design agency very much focused on product, and Ilana works with clients like Visa and Nike and Citibank and Panasonic. It's her first time at ICOM, so please give her a warm round of applause. Thank you. I'm going to get Keenan up first. Also joining us is Keenan Timko. Keenan is Senior Account Director with Twitter Mopo. For those who don't know that platform, it's a mobile-first real-time ad exchange, and Keenan's job is to work with mobile publishers and app developers to help them monetize their content. So also a first-timer at ICOM. Please give Keenan a big one first as well. And seeing as we've got a lot of great content and great examples to share, no further ado from me. So, Ilana, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Guy, and I'm actually very much enjoyed being here. I just came from DC where I gave this same presentation to regulators and privacy professionals, and I gotta tell you guys you're a much friendlier audience, so appreciate having me. So to get started, I think we all kind of know in this room that native advertising has the ability to kind of thwart the ad blockers, but really want to present more of a challenge to the industry. Like, is that really our goal, to thwart the ad blockers? We really see that native advertising has a potential to be so much more. We can really engage with consumers on a much deeper level and really create relationships with them more than traditional advertising. But a lot of times, just being native isn't enough. And so we see this a lot in our research, is that you can look native, like the example on the top, but still very much feel like an ad. And we see in our research that people are more likely not to actually consume that content than they are when something actually really truly is native and feels like information. The other thing I think that everybody in this room knows is that advertising is only going to be successful if it's relevant. But what we find in our research also is that when it comes to content, you have to be hyper relevant. And I'm going to show you some examples of how that kind of plays out. And so we really have to know our customer very well. And the other pitfall that we're seeing is that if you go too native and people don't know it's you behind the content, what good is it to your brand? You get no brand lift if they don't realize that you're behind what you've created. And you also have a big risk that if they find out after the fact, then people feel tricked. They feel like, hey, that was a sponsored content, and now all of a sudden I find out there was a brand behind it. So at the end of the day, I think we all know that advertising, if you're going to survey people and say, do you like advertising? People are going to say no. I mean, this is just kind of the way of our world. But I want to pose a challenge to this room. I want us to say, can we pivot and start talking about things in a more positive way? Can we, as an industry, start talking about things like targeting our customers? So what we like to talk about is what we call hype. Highly integrated, personalized experiences. These are things that are valuable to consumers. They're integrated into what they're trying to do. They're engaging because they're relevant, and they're transparent and let the brand shine. So we ask all of you to help us in promoting a more positive outlook to native advertising. So I'm not going to obviously talk about these 8 components of a hype. I have lots of content behind this. If anybody wants to, I can talk to you about it after the fact. But what happens is a lot of native advertising isn't actually working because one of these components is missing. So I'm going to show you some examples. So on the good news side, this is an eye tracking study where we can actually see where people look on the screen, is that if you're in a content zone, people are actually going to view your content. So dead zones are places where people have come to ignore because they expect advertising to be there. And actually the numbers are quite stunning, where you get 68% of content, native advertising in content zones are viewed versus 37% in dead zones. But this is where I get excited. This is a hype. So when your content's really engaging versus like traditional advertising, dresses from $5, that's where you see the people engaging a lot more deeply when something is actually relevant to them and funny. By the way, animals are very funny. Everybody loves animals. They do quite well. That's a cat. You can't even see it. They looked at it so long. But like I was saying before, you have to be hyper relevant. So for example, if you know someone's pregnant and it's just not enough, you can't just say, oh, how to wash your baby, right? So imagine if you're a first-time mom, that could be a very interesting piece of content that you want to engage with. But if you have 5 kids, that's the last thing you want to find out about, right? I know how to wash the baby, but stick them in the sink and let the older kid wash the baby. You might want to instead know how to cook dinner in a one pot. So when it comes to content, we have to be very careful in understanding who they are, otherwise they're just not going to engage. I'm not going to play this video because I've been told that the sound doesn't work in the acoustics, so I'm going to talk over it. But you're going to see an individual looking at sponsored content on their Facebook feed and actually engaging with it. And then what he says after he engages with it is that, hey, I really like this. Then you're going to see him going to his Instagram feed, and it's going to be content which is about a car that is an off-road car. And this guy likes sports cars, and he's like, I'm not going to click on that. That's irrelevant to me. It's off-road. So it's really about being hyper relevant. So the other thing is, and this is one of the pitfalls we see, is it's just not enough to engage people. You have to follow through. And you get actually a dip when people say, hey, you got me engaged, you took my time, I clicked on your link, and then you gave me crap afterwards. And this is where the brand goes, you get a hit versus a lift. And so really want to making sure that it's a full experience that needs to happen. And the other thing that happens is we live in an ecosystem, right? And so unfortunately there's some brands out there that are creating content that's either deceptive or it's push to purchase and it's just low quality. And what we're concerned about is that that's going to really pull all of us down, and we're going to get a new dead zone out there. When people see the word sponsored, they avoid it. And so we really as an industry have to kind of help everybody create better content so that we can actually take advantage of this platform. So here's one of the big challenges, and then I'm going to also show you an interesting example of how you can overcome it. So you really want to have your brand shine, because otherwise what's the point? But in certain platforms you're very constrained. You can't put your logo, you can't change your font. From a design perspective, it's hard to really be you. And this is kind of what happens when people don't realize that it's you.
That's the thing. Mm-hmm. With me personally, if for instance I thought it was a real post and it ended up being an ad, even if it might be something I'm interested in, the fact that I feel like maybe there was some deception to get me there is gonna hinder me from wanting to purchase something or to look at a certain product. I don't like to be manipulated into selecting something that I don't realize at the time, and
so that's what we don't want. But this is a good example of how you can actually do it well. So even though you're on a constrained platform and you can't maybe make your brand shine in the design pattern, you can do something in the content. And so this is BuzzFeed with Scrubbing Bubbles and Omnicom, and people actually see the Scrubbing Bubbles logo and they know who's behind it. So I'm going to leave you with this last video, and what it is first going to show you what happens when traditional advertising is integrated and how people feel about it, and what happens when you really create a hype and how that really impacts your brand.
It's kind of annoying having ads in the middle of my Instagram.
On YouTube, there's always ads before or after the video. They definitely can be frustrating sometimes. I usually kind of tune it out. When you can skip the ad, I always skip.
It was a video about how it's like to share a bathroom. And then I'd probably make a comment to my roommate like, hey, this was us years ago.
So that smile is kind of, I think, what we're all kind of going for at the end of the day. So this is what I leave you with, is that, before we didn't have the tools, we didn't have the ability to actually effectively deliver the content that people wanted when they wanted it. We're at a situation right now where we're getting to that point where with data, we're able to do that, but we have to do it in the right way. We have to talk about it in the right way. We have to deliver the right content. And I think moving forward, advertising is not going to be seen as that bad word. We could actually be seen as something very valuable that delivers engagement to consumers. Ooh, I give you 30 seconds. Thank you.